Good evening. Welcome to The Pipeline. My name is Cory Morgan. I'm a senior columnist with the Western Standard. This is our weekly panel show. Usually there's other people in a different lineup. You always get stuck with me. I always show up. I really don't have much of a life, but other people are doing other things and different things, which is fine because we can diversify our voices. This time around, we got a lot of subjects to cover. So I'm going to start on the end and introducing James Finkbeiner. You've been on shows before, but I don't think you've been on The Pipeline yet, have you?
I have been on The Pipeline a couple of times, but not actually not since the first week I was back. June of last year.
Okay, well,
yeah, it's been over a year and a half now.
Quite a while. Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Great. We got Jen Hodgson. Again, this is the first pipeline appearance for you this time. Okay, so there in general, the pipeline has gotten a lot prettier on that end of things. I'm still here to hold up the ugly old guy corner for things. So.
We got the B team today.
Yeah.
Happy to help.
It's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it. So let's jump into the subjects and the issues. We've got federal politics to kick things off here.
Oh, I'm excited.
Everybody's favorite, Justin Trudeau. It's an annual thing. They have their cabinet caucus retreat. All the members of parliament get ready to take on the new year of politics. They're in dire straits. I mean, this is a party in a heck of a lot of trouble. I'll start with you, Jen. Actually, I'll start in the middle. And, what did you see for reports coming out of this? I mean, they were pretty tight. I didn't see any bombshells really coming out of this meeting, this retreat.
Not so far, only some commentary going into it. So the Liberals have faced a litany of challenges from the by-election loss in Toronto, the chief of staff, the national campaign director stepping down, not to mention the dissolution of the coalition government with the NDP. So Trudeau has been facing a lot of obstacles, and what commentary is saying is that the prime minister should be facing the whole rigmarole from his caucus. However, probably that's not going to happen. They seem to be sidestepping it, and very few are willing to actually confront the prime minister and make any tangible change within the caucus. However, we did see the other day the Deputy Assistant Speaker of the House saying that her constituents many of them are calling for Trudeau to resign, citing weak leadership. So he's getting it from all sides.
Yeah, the whisper campaign's beginning, but do you think they're going to speak up?
No. Even the MP that you're talking about, she comes out, speaks up, and she goes, but the prime minister still has my support. Are you kidding? So you're just all of your constituents, you're just going to slap them in the face and they want him gone, and you're just going to say, oh no, I still support him. I don't know. The Liberal Party operates like a mafia, and the lower you are on the food chain, the less likely you are to speak out, because you will have no chance of promotion. You will lose your committee assignments, and your career's basically over. You're just decoration at that point. You're not getting anything done. And I just don't see any of them actually making the move to address it. The Leger poll that came out, I think it came out yesterday, and it is like massive. Like the Conservatives are at 45%. I think the seat projection, and don't quote me on this, please. I think it was 263. That is a massive supermajority. I think Brian Mulroney was the last one that had a majority that big. And there's two big by-elections on Monday. And I think we will find out Monday, because that is when Parliament returns, how much longer Trudeau is going to last. Because if they lose those two by-elections, especially the one in Montreal, that has been a Liberal seat, I think, since Confederation, how can he remain the leader? And it's a three-way race right now between the Bloc, the NDP, and the Liberals in that riding. So I don't know. I can't see anyone, especially in his cabinet, standing up to him and making a move. And I don't have faith that any of the other MPs will either.
The self-serving, I mean, I'm cynical with Liberals. And, a lot of them, when the push finally comes to shove, you think they want to protect their own skin. I mean, if this party is facing certain obliteration in the next election, eventually some of these MPs would have to say, I've got nothing to lose. Kick me off the committee for the next 6 months. Big deal. I've got to speak up. I mean, maybe I've got a 10% chance of salvaging my seat if I can show myself as having a backbone and calling out that this weak, directionless prime minister. But they don't do it.
You would think. So it would seem like if someone did stand up and have a kind of backbone in the Liberal caucus to say, hey, we still, as Liberals, and again, I'm playing devil's advocate from the other side, we're still liberals. We have these kind of values. Well, maybe we can implement them if we didn't have this weak leader who is just riddled with scandal. However, we don't see this. We see almost uniformly the Liberal MPs doubling down, especially the top tier ones like Guilbeault, Freeland. They are lockstep with Trudeau, and you don't see any kind of derision from there, even though it would be warranted. So we just see the propping up of the Prime Minister, and with the Bloc Québécois leader stepping into Jagmeet Singh's empty bed, so to speak, with the coalition government, or attempting to anyways, he'll come right out and say, well, we don't support the Prime Minister and we don't want to elongate his reign any more than possible. However, if it's in Quebec interest, then we'll make these certain concessions and prop him up just like Jagmeet Singh did.
Well, yeah, going further to that, then, you know, James, like the politics that are going on now, I mean, part of Singh was, he's smart enough to know this is the closest he's ever going to get to power. Holding the balance of power in a minority government is the NDP dream. They're never going to win government. But if you can really pull the levers with these guys, and he got a lot out of them. He got the dental plan, he got the pharmacare and lunches for kids, and just a giant NDP style intrusive government. But now we could be handing off the partnership to somebody even more dangerous. Because Blanchet's smarter than Singh.
Oh, way smarter.
And
way smarter.
He makes no bones of what he's about.
No.
Quebec first, Quebec only.
And he says it all the time. Yeah. But is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing for Alberta?
Well, for a separatist, no.
Because, well, it's true, that too. But whatever he gives to the Bloc for Quebec, Alberta is going to be standing there going, and Premier Smith will be like, me too. We want the exact same thing. And what leg will they have to stand on? And then that will give Alberta different legal mechanisms to say, look, you're giving this to Quebec. You're going to give it to us the exact same way. And I think that there's going to be a big coalition of premiers who are also going to say, well, if Quebec's getting it, we're going to get it too. So, you know, it might give some of the provinces more leverage. You know, I don't have any sort of hope that Trudeau would do the right thing and give Quebec one thing and give Alberta something completely different. We've seen that with home heating oil and where his vote base is. But like the Leger poll has him completely wiped out on the East Coast. So the home heating oil did no favors for him in the end anyways. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but how long is the Bloc going to be willing to do that? But that's the other thing. This poll is showing the Bloc is going to be the official opposition. Well, they aren't getting anything as the official opposition. They are going to oppose everything that Prime Minister Pierre Poilievre is going to do. So, you know, he's going to want to hang on with this minority government and try to get all he can out of Trudeau. So we may get all the way to the fall of 2025 now if the Bloc decide to prop him up.
Whereas I like to pedantically keep reminding people, constitutionally, Justin could stretch it out until the fall of 2026.
Oh.
I know that gives chills to people, but the set election date's just legislation. They can always repeal that and stretch it another year. I doubt it's going to go to that. But there doesn't seem to be a sense of desperation on Trudeau's part. As I was mentioning on my own show earlier, like I would have expected from one of these retreats, whether the cabinet or the caucus, some big announcements, some big changes, some indication they realize that they have to change course. And there's nothing.
Melanie Joly, in the most insane thing I've heard out of her in a while, she says, Canadians do not, what she's hearing at the doors is Canadians don't want an election. They just want the Liberals to do the job. Madam Joly, it's been almost a decade. It's quite clear you guys are incapable of doing the job. There is no leadership. You are a rudderless ship. You are running around and undoing your bad policies in one place and putting worse policies in the other place. Nobody knows the direction of your government. We want an election. All of the polls are unanimous across the country. We want an election. We want an election now.
Yeah, well, Joly's talents, she's not an intellectual. So, you know, whatever maintains her cabinet position is a lot of speculation, but it hasn't been her policy depth or ability to listen to what Canadians want in general. But she seems to be pretty secure in cabinet, no matter what seems to happen outside. But I mean, separately, besides me being a jerk to imply things about Joly, we've got somebody coming into the mix, not in cabinet, not in caucus, but who is smart, who is frighteningly so, but is no less ideological, and that's Mark Carney. What happened there? How has he suddenly surfaced?
Right. So he seems to have just waltzed right in. I remember about maybe winter of last year at the World Economic Forum events where he was waltzing around there. And I started reading up on him then and saw that he did have a lot of connection to globalists and he has this global mindset. However, he has a long history with liberal political figures. And so he stepped in as a kind of advisor, financial advisor. Pierre Poilievre this morning said that he's the phantom finance minister that's come in to push Chrystia Freeland aside.
Smart way to poke a little division into there because she's got to feel a little threatened on her flank with him popping in there.
Oh, but how about the insanity of the fact that they appointed someone who is involved on so many different businesses, not to a government position, but an advisor to the Liberal Party. And Western Standard's Jared Jager, he's at the convention in Nanaimo right now, and he actually talked to Stephen Guilbeault and said, do you think there's a conflict of interest here? Well, of course there is. He is on the World Economic Forum. He's the chair of Brookfield Investments. He's on the board of Stripe. So how can he, like, these businesses are actively lobbying the governments in different ways. They have huge financial interests in government policy. And then I believe it was the Globe and Mail is reporting now, it was the CPC's Michael Barrett last night that tweeted this out. The Globe and Mail is now reporting that Brookfield Investments is looking at moving their headquarters out of Toronto into New York. So is that to move it so that it's no longer a Canadian company and it's not a conflict of interest? But I mean, if he's the financial advisor to the Liberal Party and he's looking at moving one of his businesses out of the country, what does that signal about our country? What does that signal about his faith in the economy and the finances of the country? What is he seeing that he's decided to make that decision?
So yeah, it's interesting. Like Carney is giving himself that one separation from an electable role, but still close to the Liberal throne. He can be involved, he can be at the higher levels of the party, but he's inoculated himself for the inevitable crash when they hit the polls.
That's right. He's quite positioned himself rather cleverly. So he's never been elected, yet he's right there whispering into the prime minister's ear. And by juxtaposition, comparing Trudeau to Carney, they're two very different characters. And after 9 years of Trudeau, the drama teacher who has just had scandal after scandal, perhaps to some Canadians, liberal-leaning Canadians, having a figure like Mark Carney, they might perceive him to be someone who's more level-headed, someone who is, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but more trustworthy, more able to handle the books and things like this, just because of he doesn't have a track record like Trudeau does. So there might be a certain advantage for him swooping in like this in case he does position himself for the next election.
A lot of intrigue. I mean, this is a party that's swirling the drain, and people realize it'll still be a path to power. The Liberals will get in at some time or another, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3 election cycles, but they're going to come back.
Yeah.
But that's a tough, long game to play amongst a lot of sharks to be in position when the time gets.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see if Mark Carney is still there by the time this is done. Like, this is the former governor of the Bank of Canada, and he gets a lot of credit for the Great Recession and keeping the Bank of Canada stable through that. I personally don't give him all the credit. I think Harper deserves more credit than that than he does. I think Obama pushed both Carney and Harper to spend more money than we should have coming out of that recession, and that caused some issues there. But, you know, he did a good enough job that the Bank of England, he went over there. But he's on all of these boards. He is making so much money. Why would you want to dive into politics unless you're going to be the prime minister at this point? But even then, in 4 years, in 6 years, in 8 years, is that even going to still be something he wants, or is he going to be looking at like retiring on whatever private island? What's his face? The leader of the PPC, Maxime Bernier, where he's building his beachfront house.
I don't know.
Island
retreats have become popular.
So it'll be interesting because if it's anything like last time, there was that big, massive Liberal wipeout. Jack Layton's NDP came in. They were the official opposition. The Liberals were essentially extinct. You know, is Mark Carney then going to pick up the corpse of the Liberal Party and revive it to put himself in the prime minister's chair? Or is he going to sit here, make some money off the party, whisper into the prime minister's ear, try to fix Freeland's disastrous budgets, and when it all implodes, say, well, I tried to fix it, but, you know, it was just way too far gone?
It's going to be interesting to watch anyways. But we'll switch to some more sane politics in a moment. Actually, I got to get a quick plug to the folks out there to remind them the reason we have these panels, the reason we got all these stories breaking, the reason we got the staff is because you guys have been subscribing. So I'll have to jump in there and nag and remind you folks, $10 a month, $100 a year, just like a newspaper subscription in the old days. And it keeps us independent. We aren't asking for government dollars and we aren't taking them. I don't think they're really in a rush to give us any anyhow. But if you want good, honest coverage, you've got to support it, guys. So if you've subscribed already, thank you very much. We really, really do appreciate it. If you haven't yet, come on, get on. It's only $10 a month. You're probably paying more for like a World of Warcraft or a OnlyFans account or something. So this is more productive than that. Jump on boards. All right, so let's go on to something less controversial. The Americans had a debate last night.
Oh, did they ever?
I put myself through that. I watched it. Boy, let's get. I get you to start the last one. We'll get James to kind of frame. What was your impression? Or what do you think you see coming?
Okay, I actually had a conversation with actually a good friend of mine, Kristen Raworth. Right, so she's generally considered a bit of a red Tory, and to her, Kamala Harris won that debate. And I said, maybe, but to normies, I said, you don't understand mega people. You don't understand Trump supporters. And I said, I live in that world. I'm in that world. And I'm telling you right now, Trump won that debate. And the reason why Trump won that debate is because today, every single person on earth is talking about people eating cats and dogs and executing babies. Yeah. Nobody is talking about policy. Nobody's talking about deficit. Nobody's talking about debt. They're talking about the immigration, but they're talking about immigration because Trump's saying they're eating cats and dogs. Trump debated to his people last night. He was looking in the camera, he was focused, and he was talking to his supporters, and he gave them the greatest hits. He gave them their rapists. He gave them their murderers. He said, they're coming into the country and taking our jobs. They're doing this. We got to deal with China. There wouldn't be a war with Russia. He hit all of his greatest hits last night, and I think Kamala failed to land any big jabs at Trump. I don't think anything she threw at him actually stuck. She took nothing away from his supporters. He gave his supporters and his people everything they wanted. I don't think she was effective last night.
So to go further, kind of one of the things that's just amazing in American politics, these hard-fought elections, a two-party system, yet it's almost always only within a point or two come election time. It's amazing how close it is. There's rarely a blowout. And I imagine it's similar right now. Part of it, too, though, is how many undecideds watched last night? 10, 11? Like either side.
People already have their mind made
up. Was
up.
there anybody who was really going to change a mind in that debate?
Well, as James mentioned, the normies, right? So people that are just tuning into politics without looking at things like policy or thinking about what the implications of those policies might mean, they might go along with an emotion that they feel. So what really stood out to me during the debate was Kamala's biggest swing, what I thought was on abortion, where she really went for that emotional factor. Are you really going to do that to someone who's been raped or is a product of incest? Are you really going to do that? And I think that really gets a lot of people from the normal aspect to have that emotional response to it. However, it is still talking about abortion and murdering the child in the mother's womb. So I think when Trump addressed these issues head on, he really was, as James is saying, talking to his audience. That is what they want to hear, is that's actually where we draw the line as Republicans. And we don't want to just be emotionally caught up with how Kamala is spinning it.
So getting into a different crowd, I talked a little bit about that earlier, and I gave you a little bit of a warning. I want to go there, but it's different. The Taylor Swift factor, which I think might really be one.
I think so, too.
Not so much the undecided, but the indifferent. I mean, there's a lot of young people who just never voted, never paid attention really or anything else, but they are fanatically dedicated to Taylor Swift. We're not talking about a few thousand. We're talking millions of people. Yeah. And she has come out and very directly endorsed Kamala Harris. Right. If those Swifties come out and vote, that when I'm talking about those 1% type of swings in an election, she could be the game changer in this. Like, what a strange time to be in.
Think of Taylor Swift's army. Think of her tour. Her tour has a GDP that's bigger than most countries at this point. The amount of power and sway and celebrity that she has.
People go to her concerts in like faint.
Yeah, they go to the concerts and they go and watch the concert from outside and just to listen, like outside of, like, they'd be like standing outside the Saddle Dome just listening to the noise inside. But if the Swifties mobilize like they have against some other things, and they actually, like, if the Swifties help Kamala's team with GOTV, with Get Out the Vote, it could be massive, honestly. That is like a whole secondary army coming in. And like the DNC and the RNC and these elections, they have armies of door knockers, canvassers, whatever. If the Swifties mobilize into door knockers, canvassers, stuff like that, the undecideds could get pushed that way very rapidly.
Well, speaking of,
they just vote.
Yeah.
Right. Speaking of Swifties mobilizing, though, however, I saw a trend on social media just last night or the night before. I saw it come up. Swifties for Trump, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And so there's all these, it looks like a faction of Swift supporters who are voting for Donald Trump. They have t-shirts, they're doing dances on TikTok. So there's a whole line of them that are saying, okay, well, you know, our queen says this and we can still be Swifties. However, it doesn't have to be political. But I think that's a small faction. And the majority of them, as you say, are going to get caught up in this mob mentality. Oh, well, Taylor Swift said to vote for Kamala. Well, then we must mobilize and get ready. However, Swifties going out to door knocking for a political cause, I don't know if I quite see that.
I don't know.
Yeah, you never know what to expect.
You never know anymore. Like, okay, we're talking about eating cats and dogs and executing babies and Swiftie endorsements. All of the normal rules in politics are out the window.
That's it. I mean, celebrities, you know, speaking up in politics is nothing new, and it's had a little bit of influence and so on. But I mean, this is a titanic force we're talking about, like we haven't seen before. I mean, we're the modern equivalent of the Beatles or something huge in you know, their time, and they didn't directly endorse candidates in elections. It's just an interesting factor to be measured, you know, if it mobilizes them with her coming out like that. I mean, it can bring backlash too. But,
well, and that's why Taylor Swift has stayed out of politics, right? Because her roots were in country music. So you're not going to have a massive liberal leaning audience when you come from country music. Your base is going to be mostly Republican, mostly rural. Her first tours were like with Brad Paisley. Like, she's not really built on a liberal platform. She's built on more of a conservative platform.
Until she went to Hollywood.
And then there was like a few years and just certain policies. So she's always kind of been clear that she has leaned towards the Democrats because of LGBT issues and her personal stance on abortion. And I mean, fine. Most celebrities, you know, like, I mean, Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan were at the RNC convention. So, why wouldn't Taylor Swift jump in on the other side at this point, right?
Sure, but I mean, you know, Kid Rock just isn't going to pull him like
no.
And the influence she's had, like even myself as an NFL fan, and now she's dating Kelsey. So there's a whole new audience. The viewership rate has gone up for Kansas City games, and just because these are new viewers. That's what I'm saying. The factor with this voting, she didn't change anybody who already had team loyalties. But she brought in a whole new raft of people that never watched in the first place. And that's what I see with the election. She's going to bring a bunch of non-voters into the mix, and their votes count just as much as a registered Republican or Democrat.
Well, and I mean, me, if I'm in a press scrum and Kelsey's right in front of me, the first question I'm asking is, who are you voting for? So, you know, maybe we're going to see a familial split here where, you know, they don't agree, but they agree to vote separately. Like, that happens a lot. That happens a lot in the States for sure, too. But what if he says he's going to back Harris? What if a bunch of the NFL players, especially with some of the BLM stuff and through some of their own movements, a bunch of NFL players start coming out and they endorse Harris, which it would be interesting to see athletes starting to endorse candidates. But could that also mobilize, you know, the average person who sits at home, who just watches football on the weekends, and they decide they're going to vote? Or what if he endorses Trump? And, it's a fascinating whole new world.
Well, you have to wonder, too, if Swift came out of her own volition and endorsed Kamala that way, or if there has been some kind of influence. Who knows where the money is moving?
How do you influence her? How big a bribe would you need to influence Swift?
Right.
I mean, she can buy countries. You know, there's nobody has the money
that's a good
to
point.
influence her that way. I mean, they can influence her, but that's what's interesting too. Even if she gets a bit of backlash, loses a bit of following, she's too big to fail, as the old saying goes.
Yeah.
But I mean, she's going to lose those people maybe in the States, but she still has the entire rest of the world. So I actually seen, it was a while ago, someone actually broke down to the median family income, comparing what her income is. And basically to her, the $100,000 each to all of the truck drivers and bonuses she gave amounts to $1.67 or something. It was basically, it was less than a cup of coffee is what it actually cost to her. So for me making whatever I make, what a cup of coffee costs to me, her giving $1 million worth of bonuses to the truck drivers equates to her about the same as much as a cup of coffee. So I honestly think the amount of the entire spend of Kamala's campaign wouldn't be enough to influence her to endorse. I think that's coming straight from her. And it was funny that she signed it off as the childless cat lady because Trump has been calling liberal women a bunch of childless cat ladies.
Yeah.
And, and also kind of funny that she posted a picture of her and a cat after Trump said the immigrants were eating cats. The internet is absolutely on fire. But that's the thing. That's why Trump won. The internet is all full of memes about stuff Trump said. Nobody remembers policy. Nobody remembers policy.
And that's part of why, and I was a little rough on Trump on my show, and I'll say it again. I don't like the guy. If I was in the States, I'd probably vote for him because I still want to see a conservatively government better than Kamala, but I do not like him. But I'm a policy guy. I want to see policies, and that's why I'm frustrated. But I'm in the minority. As you said, sound bites, capturing news, dominating the memes is how you capture the vote now. Rather
Trump called that out last night too. He said that's a lie, and that was a soundbite, and really made me angry. There was 4 or 5 times. I think Ben Shapiro actually pointed a few of them out too last night, where Kamala flat out lied. And they did not push back on her. Oh, no. And that was frustrating too. But that also directly feeds into Trump's narrative about the fake news, the fake media. They're all against me. They're saying I'm a danger to democracy, but look at how they behave. He has denounced Project 2025 repeatedly from the beginning. Yes, some of his team did write that. He has not endorsed it. He has said he will not put that policy in place. And she said he was going to do it. He had to push back on it. And neither of the hosts said a damn word. And that was frustrating.
That's true. And it does only play into Trump when, it's like the old saying, it's not a conspiracy when they really are all out to get you.
Yeah.
And the bias in the moderation of that debate was terrible.
Yep.
Yes.
And, I tweeted that. I just said, geez, I hate it when moderators jump in on the debate. And I don't care what side. I didn't tune in to listen to the stinking moderators. I tuned in to listen to the candidates and the role of the person to counter Trump's lies. And he lied a lot.
Yeah.
That's Kamala's role. That's your job. And Trump, likewise, the other way, you correct her. And, for example, with her denying that she was donating to, get Black Lives Matters people on bail. She did.
Yeah.
And her own tweets out there. But that's his job. Keep the moderators out of it. So when people view that and see, holy cow, those 2 moderators are totally against Trump, and they were.
Yeah.
That really entrenches the Trump supporters. So might not gain new ones, but it certainly it galvanizes the existing ones.
See, and I actually think it does push some of the more moderates in swing states. Like I'm thinking specifically of like Arizona, because they're not really extreme Republicans there. But when you hear the media and you hear this and everybody is against the person, you kind of start to gravitate towards that person if you're a center-right person. Because you're like, what are they doing? What are these because I would say ABC is an extreme liberal network, and you have probably one of the most extreme liberal candidates in the history of the presidency of the United States. And if I'm sitting there as a center-right person and a moderate, and I'm seeing, okay, Kamala, the news, everyone else is all ganging up on Trump, maybe there's something here that I should push towards Trump on. I also like fighting for an underdog too, but
anybody with an anti-establishment attitude is going to feel more, well, the establishment doesn't like this guy. Yeah. I don't like the establishment, so he's getting my X.
And another thing last night that really stood out for me, that really made me angry, was Kamala taking a victory lap on not having servicemen serving anywhere around the world right now. Everyone's at home. We're not in an active war zone, blah, 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 blah. It's especially embarrassing that today is September 11th. I had friends that fought in Afghanistan for Canada. Both of them have PTSD. One of them has a service dog. They have gone through extreme mental anguish. And there are so many more American veterans that went through so much worse in Afghanistan and Iraq. And her withdrawal and the blood on her hands from that withdrawal from Afghanistan, the people we left behind, the weapons and ammunition and the machinery and the equipment that we left behind, and the people that died, she should have apologized for that and not taken a victory lap. To me, it was disgusting. To me, she pivoted off of it when Trump said, you didn't even go see those families, and I did, and she pivoted off of it to a victory lap, and I think that was disgusting.
Yeah, no, the veterans, I think in typical or in general, are going to be heavily Democrat these days. It's just not where they're sitting.
No kidding.
All right, well, let's get on to something. I don't have anything light going on today.
No, not at all here.
Let's go to Coutts, Canadian-American border. The trial has come to a close. James, you spent a lot of time. You had I'll say it, my pity while you were there, because it just seemed like he's going to be back tomorrow. Yep, no, it's still going. Tomorrow, no. Weather's horrible. People are crazy. Art Pawlowski. But still, I mean, the fallout from this whole thing, the separate thing from that main, there's a lot of confusion. Maybe that's what you can lay out. There was almost two events.
Yeah.
The border protest and blockage, and then the Coutts 4.
Yeah.
Which the Coutts 4, the two just got sentenced.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was in Coutts the entire time. We got tipped off on this. It's so the whole way the whole Coutts protest went was my brother was a truck driver, and he sent me the flyer. I seen the flyer and I thought, holy, they're going to go to the border. They're going to shut down the border. I gave the story to Mel and Dave. Mel chased it down. We broke the story. And actually that night was the night that Jason Kenney lifted the restrictions on the pub. So we were all down at the Fox and we were all discussing it. And I said, well, you know what? I have family in Coutts. I haven't seen them. I'm just going to drive down there. I'll check it out. And we thought it was going to be one and done. We drove down there that day. The highway was still moving. Everything was all good. I walked around. I did a couple of interviews. I chatted with a few people. I called it Trucker Protest Fest because it was like a music festival. Everybody was happy. Everybody was having a good time. And then I thought the next morning when I rolled out there that it would be done. But no, there was more people showing up. And Derek said, well, you know what? It's probably going to peter itself out. Come back to the office. So I came back to Calgary, and the next morning I came in and it wasn't even 9 o'clock. And actually by that time, a couple of the guys from the Rebel, they got down there and we started seeing their reports and it was still growing. So Derek said, go. So I raced down there and I grabbed clothes for 2 or 3 days. I had all of the wrong clothes for the weather. And I was there right till the end. Now, there was two protest areas. There was Milk River, just outside of Milk River, and there was Coutts, and the main area, Coutts, was the saloon. And then there was a house in town where some of the folks were hanging out. The Coutts 4, the folks with the weapons, they mostly hung around there. They kind of came into the other area. Marco, Alex, and I'm sorry, his name's escaping me right now. Those guys were mostly on kind of this committee, and there was some truckers and other farmers that were there as well, and they made up that committee, and these other 4 weren't really part of that. I never heard a word the entire time down there about weapons. I never heard anybody say we're going to have a shootout with the police. The closest it ever came to it was during Art Pawlowski's sermon, where he said, this is our Alamo. We need to stay. We need to shut down this border. We can't leave when we're about to win.
Then he left.
Yeah, and then he left. But that was the closest to dangerous or violent or anything that I ever heard that whole time that was down there. Now the trial's over. They were found not guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. The people who keep continuing to say that they had a plot to kill the police, you're wrong. That did not happen. A jury of their peers examined the evidence and they have decided that did not happen. So people need to take that off the table. And now we need to look at the weapons. So they had guns. They had a restricted weapon. It was possession of a restricted weapon. And from what I understand, they just didn't have the license to have the weapon. But this is Canada. We have very serious charges for weapons offenses. And I have been a longtime advocate of stiffer sentences no bail for criminals with dangerous history, and they were charged with conspiracy to commit murder, I would expect them not to get bail. Now, there are a lot of people that are very upset, and understandably so, because it is very provable that people charged with more serious offenses, for an example, there was a shooting in Medicine Hat where someone actually got shot a few weeks ago. The person who shot him is out on bail right now. So these guys just had a supposed conspiracy, yet they were held in jail without bail for 900 days. And this guy actually shot someone and he's out. People are frustrated about that, the double standard in the system. I agree. It's even more insane, but I support stiffer sentences, so I'm okay with their sentence. But compared to other situations, I believe it was Andy Lee who pointed this out on Twitter, there was somebody who cracked open a police officer's head with a skateboard, got less time in jail. The 2 kids that ran over a cop here in Calgary and killed him, they got less time in jail. You can kill a cop in this country and get less time in jail than these guys got for weapons offenses. That is what people are so mad about. That is the part of the system that is broken, and I agree. But I also agree that we are a country of laws and order, and there are consequences for not following those laws.
Yeah, well, the question, though, is the sentence, right? So, Jen, like, on these charges, I mean, the judge, okay, the jury made a decision. The judge chooses the sentencing, and he picked a very large one.
Yes.
Typically in Canada, it's 2 to 3 times the amount you spent in remand gets credited towards your sentence. I believe they gave them double time.
Was it double or was it? I think it was 1.5.
Okay, because it's judicial discretion there too. I mean,
Yeah.
he could
Right.
very well have given them a sentence of a few years, but then credited and released them. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're looking to make an example of these guys, I think it's already been made.
That's right. And he could have been a lot more forgiving in that sense. I myself went down to the courthouse in Lethbridge and witnessed the sentencing. The judge spent about almost 3 hours reading the decision. And in that decision, he cited several precedent cases, maybe 18 to 20 other cases in Canadian history, reaching back to the 80s, as recent as 23, where each of these cases had far less sentencing decisions than what he handed out to these Coutts boys. So many of these prior cases had 3 years, 4 years, and then he turned around and gave Tony and Chris this 6.5-year sentencing. And that is for the weapons offense. They also got sentenced to 6 months each for mischief. And this sentence can be served concurrently with their other ones. So it still sets a precedent for others facing mischief charges, especially from the time of the Freedom Convoy in Canada. So here in Alberta, the Coutts 3 you mentioned, Marco and Alex, the 3 of them, and also Tamara Leach in Ottawa. So I learned that in Alberta, if there's a mischief sentence or any sentence, then that is a required sentence for all other cases like it in the province. So that means that the other Coutts 3 are expecting to get that 6 months at least. And it sets a precedent for other provinces. So Leach in Ontario, for example, they'll look at this case and that will at least set kind of a minimum. But the judge said outright that he was using this as an example. He said, this is so that you 2 boys, but also the rest of Canada knows that you can't be getting up to this kind of behavior.
I mean, you know, how much do you think it would impact anybody who really, I don't know what was going through their minds. I know one of them personally. He's from out in my area in Pritis and so on. And at least from, you know, my anecdotal and knowledge of him, he's not a violent guy. He wasn't going to go kill people or start a revolution. He made, in my view, some stupid decisions. And those decisions have consequences. But they weren't going to start a revolution. Even if they wanted to, they're 4 guys. Those 4 people could cause a lot of damage. Fair enough. Now, if somebody's really convinced themselves in a crazed world of cosplay that they're on the cusp of the revolution, they're on the brink of the world truly falling apart and becoming dystopian, do you think any of them would really think twice or care less what the last sentence was for somebody who did that?
No, I don't think that was something that was on their mind. However, the judge, he explicitly said, okay, so these men were acquitted. They were found not guilty for the conspiracy charges to murder a police officer. And by the way, he made it clear too that there was no terrorism related offenses here, contrary to common allegations on social media.
Yeah.
That's just not a thing in this case. However, even though that was they were acquitted of that charge, he continued to circle back to that theme, and he was trying to make this connection for using the weapons for a dangerous purpose, which brings up the explosive that Tony was sentenced a further charge, an extra 6 months. And the judge came right out and said, well, I don't know that you were using this for a dangerous purpose or if it's for something else like work. I can't say beyond a reasonable doubt that this was for a dangerous purpose. However, he still got the 6-month sentence for that anyways.
Well, and the Crown is still, it sounds like, appealing, and they're going to try and get a conviction on the conspiracy to murder an RCMP officer.
So is defense.
To be honest, in my view, I'm not a lawyer, but I think they're wasting time.
They're absolutely wasting time. And to me, it actually, I find it offensive. A jury trial is selected for a reason. And a jury of their peers has examined all of the evidence and decided their case did not meet the threshold. They were not guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. And it is a waste of government money. There are serious criminals out there. There are serious crimes going on. We have already spent so much on the prosecution of these protesters. And we have also seen that protesters who get charged in BC that are in alignment with the federal government and are supposed to be deported out of our country will be saved by a minister. At this point, I believe someone needs to stand up and say, an appeal is not in the public interest. It is not in the fiscal interest. Enough. You failed. That plot did not exist. They were found not guilty. You held them responsible for taking the weapons there. That was the crime they did commit. Now, I'm 50-50 on this explosive device. I understand someone did testify and said that it was something work-related. But it wasn't at the protest site either. It was not in Coutts. It was several hundred kilometers away in his home. But the thing is, when you get arrested and you are charged for suspicion to commit murder, your house is going to be searched. And if there is a secondary crime in your house, such as an explosive weapon, you will be charged with that. That's what happens. This is a terrible analogy. I don't want to compare it with these guys. But if the RCMP searched their house and found child porn, you would expect they also get charged with that. So that is just the way the system works. Now, I don't understand, but the jury obviously, through listening through everything with the trial, decided that he was guilty of the possession of an explosive weapon. So I'm going to go with what the jury decided. Now, there is also the secret envelope.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't even want to speculate. If the defense appeals on the grounds of that envelope and said that the judge erred, I agree in defensive appeals. I don't agree in prosecutors appealing a jury decision, unless it's like outright the judge really did something. But I don't think the judge did something wrong in this case. And there are reasons inside law where certain evidence is excluded. That is just part of the system, and it's about fairness of the trial. So, we will probably never know what's in that envelope. Maybe someday we will know. Maybe somebody does actually know. Maybe the defense appeal will see what's in it. But I don't know. I think at this point it's done. Realistically, these guys have been model prisoners. They will probably be released within 6 months on good behavior anyways. But I just it is a double standard. They were held to a higher threshold. They were held more accountable than everyone else. But me personally, I want to see criminals punished more, and not them, but all of the other ones as well.
Just to your point about the sealed envelope, I spoke with Carbert's attorney, and she confirmed of the envelope. She said that she actually has seen it herself, and in closed door meetings, they had a decision to keep it client attorney privilege. And so I have also heard speculations about what is contained in this envelope in terms of incriminating behavior of one of the Crown prosecutors and the RCMP, but we don't know for sure. We only have this speculation. However, she did confirm that in the appeals process, so she's going to be appealing the sentences handed down this week, and that is when the envelope is going to be addressed again. So I don't think that we've heard the last of the sealed envelope mystery.
And if that's what's in that envelope, then I would expect that we actually have an investigation into the prosecutors then, because I think there is a general mistrust of the judicial system in Canada right now. And if we have prosecutorial misconduct going on, then I think it's time for the government to stand up and do something and bring faith back into our judicial system.
That's good.
And there's lots to be done. We've run out the clock. There's going to be this issue isn't finished yet, though.
No.
That trial is, but there's still more. There's going to be appeals. There's going to be discussion, and there's going to be a lot of conspiracies. So before I let you go, I want to clarify something on there too, or at least I'll say goodbye to you guys, James and Jen. Thank you very much for doing the pipeline today.
Thank you.
Cory.
And with the online discussions, I just want to remind people too, because I've seen that there's some confusion about the role of a premier and what they can do. She can't commute sentences. She can't pardon people. She can't override a conviction. That's not Canada. That's not the role she has. It's fair critique to say you want her to speak up on this. Speaking as a political guy, I put on my political wonk hat and I'd say, don't say a peep, because it's just something you don't want to step into when you got a million other irons in the fire. I know that sounds unprincipled, but that's the way politics works. But just for people thinking that, she could release them tomorrow. No, she can't. It's just not the way it works, I'm afraid. Scream at Justin. He's the man at the helm of things. He can't pardon people either, actually, but he is the guy at the head of the federal jurisdiction of this whole thing. All right, but that was a lot of crazy subjects to cover. So thank you very much. Yeah, nice, light, easy stuff. I just save it for when you guys come to the pipeline. So thank you all for tuning in, guys. And again, be sure to tune into our other shows. Hannaford is fantastic. Once in a while, I do all right on mine at the Cory Morgan Show. And be sure to subscribe to the Western Standard and catch those things as they're happening. So thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next time. If the name Ted Byfield brings back fond memories, well, we got a party coming up for you guys. On September 25th, Toasting Ted is what it's called. It's going to honor a great conservative who published Alberta Report news magazine. It's going to be bagpipes, singing, live auction stakes, speeches by Premier Smith, Preston Manning, Stephen Harper, quite a lineup. The Western Standard is the final incarnation, or the latest incarnation, of Alberta Report that Ted Byfield founded. And I mean, he was a great Albertan. He really made his mark on this province, and this evening of celebration for him is really going to be outstanding. You get there, toastingted.ca. That's the website. You can get your tickets. This one's going to sell out. I mean, again, if you want to see Smith, Manning, Harper, all in one spot, one night, be sure to get there.
You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month, or $99